Welcome to Building Great Sales Teams, a show dedicated to making sales teams tick, tick, boom. Great sales teams are not recruited, they are built, block by block. Let's get to work.
All right, guys, I'm super excited today. I've got John Highley on the podcast. To me, he's an amazing husband, father, and one of my favorite things about him is when you look at him, he just looks dangerous. You know what I'm saying? He's a big dude, tattoos everywhere, but probably one of the smartest businessmen that I know. He holds a licensing deal for an automotive tool. He's branded himself as the marketing savage. He's the website king, a CRM builder, an amazing copywriter, and he also has the Marketing Revolution podcast, as well as Savage Sundays. Every Sundays, he's given us the word on Sundays in his version. And one of the things I love about you, John, is that you're not just a speaker, but you're a philosopher. You know, that's one of the things that I've really appreciated about you, and that hasn't probably had the most impact on me personally. I think I've told you that before. Especially with your the speech you did at Real Business Owners, that had a lot of impact on me. And so, like, there's a lot of speakers out there, but the philosophers are pretty rare. And one of the things I've noticed about you is you consume information and you retain it so well. And so I wanted to go right into that, if you don't mind. Start them out hot and heavy, I guess. And one of the things you talked about at the RBO Mastermind was, if competition is what motivates you, then your motivation may be broken. By divine authority, we have pulled cars from mountains. Who are we to have competition be our only motivation?
Yeah, man. I appreciate that, by the way. Hey, thanks for the great intro. And to be honest with you, I never knew that I was a philosopher until one of my mentors told me that. He literally told me, Keith Craft is one of my one-on-one business coaches and mentors. Mm-hmm. I just actually had a coaching call with him yesterday. And he told me one day that I was a philosopher, and he literally told me, he's like, he always has his assistant on the call as well, David. And, he's like, David, tell John that I do not just tell everybody this. Right. And, he kind of like picked that out of me. And literally I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to look into what a philosopher is. And I actually began reading what a philosopher was. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is me. I do sit there and try to find like a deeper meaning in everything. And, ultimately, to take a step back with your question about if competition is the only thing that motivates you, it's really a weak source of motivation because it comes out of insecurity. It comes out of envy. It comes out of lack, really a spirit of lack, because it's not a war against flesh and blood. It's not a war against your brothers and sisters out there. And even if you're winning, like, you can win all day, every day, without it being a war against another human being. What you do is you got to win against circumstances. Whatever your circumstance is, you were put here to overcome that circumstance. You don't have to make your primary motivation, stomping on people, stepping on them on the way up the ladder, and then throwing down the ladder behind you so nobody else can climb it. I mean, if everybody just continues to do things that way, it's like if you're a small part of the problem, you're part of the problem, right?
Right.
I mean, I want everybody to excel. I want everybody to have abundance. I want everybody to walk in their authority. I don't want my success to come at the detriment of somebody else. And, for me, it's not about taking a piece of the pie. It's about the pie getting bigger, expanding and growing and helping people. One of the things you'll notice about me, Doug, is that, that I own the Marketing Savage, and I'm friends with every single marketer that's in our groups and that we're associated with. Like, I give them guys so much business, and we talk all the time, and we became friends. We've created synergy. We've created a, if you will, more of like a syndicate with each other, where we can help each other all, rise higher, rather than me coming into that situation, looking across the room, spotting a guy who could be potential competition with me and deciding that I was going to secretly create schemes to do anything to hurt this individual. And that low level of motivation puts you in a terrible place. Like you will end up reaping what you sow, like in and day out. And I've talked about this, that the whole reaping what you sow philosophy, it's not just what you do with your works, it's what you think. Your mind is literally like soil. And every time you put a seed in that soil, you're going to get a return. So if all day long you're fueled by hate, by envy, by anger, you're just planting them seeds in that soil that are going to come back, and you're going to have a hard time sleeping. You're going to have a hard time making new friends, because most people speak with energy. They see your energy. They see through what you say. And because of that, you're going to secretly have this shady side about yourself that appears in conversations, even when you try to hide it. And it really affects your entire environment. And everywhere you go, you end up being an individual that, like, you're not even going to know why people are just kind of like, they don't want to be around you, or why they find, like, you're just going to be like thinking like, wow, I just stepped into that group of people talking and then everybody left. Like, how did that happen? Right. Yeah. Why did that happen? And you're going to start thinking these things, and you won't even know why. It's like the people who do plan wicked schemes all the time, they don't even know why they stumble. It's like they're walking in the dark. And it's people like me that got to shed light on the situation. They said that if you want to know if anything's really right or wrong, then shed light on it. Get out there and tell people. Yeah. Say, hey man, go call your competition and tell them that you're doing these things to destroy him specifically, and go tell the world that you're doing that, and see how the world reacts to it. And I can guarantee you that there's enough people in the world that, you're going to get one or two, and you're going to find that the people that actually support you on that are going to be the exact type of people that you don't want to be.
100%, man. All right. Well, we can wrap it up there. That was good. That's all we need today. I think you gave us enough value in that. There's 5 minutes. We're good. Yeah. But just to piggyback on what you're saying, like I'm in solar, and in Apex, solar's become the new roofing, right? Everybody was a roofer when I joined, and now, like, it seems like everybody's doing solar, right? And so when I first joined, there was like 7 or 8 of us, and somebody had the idea, hey, let's create a solar chat. We can all bounce ideas off each other. Now we have a Apex Solar call once a month. I bring in speakers and stuff, and we're constantly trading value. I mean, there's over 325 million people in the U.S. Even if we sold someone every minute, we wouldn't even cover 1% of the population. You know what I'm saying? So like it's easy to feel abundant with knowledge and information and things like that inside of our group because of that idea alone, right? And you're 100% right. We had someone not come into that solar chat. He started out in the solar chat, and immediately it was very like, and even in chat, you're talking about person to person, you can feel that energy. Even in like a Facebook group chat, you can feel it too. And instead of giving the referral, he was like, well, message me, DM me. Everything had to happen behind closed doors so he can get his referral fee, and after a while, I just got tired of seeing that message me stuff in our chat. And I was just like, hey guys, if you have an installer in another market and one of us wants to use him, that does not mean you get a referral fee. That means you just know the guy. Give us the guy, what I'm saying? Because we're going to go and find him anyways. Like, you're just collapsing time for us. That's what we're all doing for each other. Give us the guy and give value to the people in the group rather than trying to make money off of every little piece of information that you have. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's not what's preached in Apex, and that's not what we're going to do in this group, Yeah. And so I 100% believe in that.
I mean, that is the spirit of scarcity come into work. And the truth of the matter is that if you are in a spirit of scarcity, which comes from fear, it's fear of lack, fear of, losing what you have. There's all these fears associated with that. You cannot be in a creative mindset when you're living in that fear. So you can't really get in creative mode because you're always in reactive mode. And you're literally, that fear causes a lot of people to be very unsuccessful because they can never really be innovative, because they just go and try to because they can't be creative in that fearful mindset. So they copy what their competitors are doing. And if you're anything like me, like I'm planning, a year ahead of time, right? Mm-hmm. So if anybody copies what I'm doing today, that's fine. I'm okay with that. Let's do it. But if you copy what I'm doing today, you're literally my exhaust, because I am a year ahead. We're working on things today. Today, I'm living, from a year ago or 2 years ago. And so if you copy just what I'm doing today, you're always going to be behind by a year or so. So you can't be in that creative spirit. And, but yeah, that's exactly why they just can't associate. It's almost like, fear and gratitude. They can't live in the same space either. If you're ever fearful about something, just get some gratitude in your life. Look around. Yeah. Be grateful for the roof over your head. Be grateful for the car that you're driving. Be grateful that you have ears to hear this podcast. Be grateful that you have eyes to see things. Mm-hmm. And you can always find something to be very grateful for. And fear just can't exist in that environment. They just can't occupy the same space.
I love it. So much of what you're talking about was me in my 20s. And it's crazy because when I first started my business, it was creative mode for the first 2 or 3 years. And turns out this is all I did, right? Yep. And then what happened was like half of my sales force, or maybe like a quarter of my sales force, got recruited away. And all of a sudden I did this, and that was to be expected. I lost a quarter of my sales force, right? But what happened is I stayed here because now I was in reactive mode. Now I was always defending, you know what I'm saying, versus creating, versus just focusing on, beating the man in the mirror from the day before, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that really did level me out for a long time until I joined, Apex, and then until I started executing on those strategies and everything. And then I got back into my creative mode. And ever since then, it's been night and day. Right.
That's it. I mean, and just imagine if that would have happened to you, and instead of going into a fearful, reactive state, you would have went into an investigative state, meaning, okay, well, why did this happen? Mm-hmm. What's the problem? Because, people don't talk about this, but in business, we're always going to have correction. Yeah. Meaning that, you hold your business down, you do the things that you're doing, you be innovative, but you should expect correction to come at certain points, meaning that some sort of market correction happens, some sort of intercultural correction happens, something changes outside of you that affects you and causes a correction in your business. And that's just an indicator that you're lagging behind somewhere. Yeah. So where is it that you're lagging behind? How can you become the best at it? And how can you begin innovating today to have a better tomorrow? So a lot of times, we're always at a fork in the road when correction happens. We're either going to go down the path where we stay the same, or we even get worse, or we even tumble and fall and everything just implodes, or we're going to take it as a sign that, man, this is great. Like I get the opportunity now to fix whatever's whatever's happening here that made this happen. And, you just, there's always two ways to look at things. And I always look at correction as just a straight up opportunity.
100%.
And, yep. So
when talking about that correction, you said you plan a year ahead. And yes. So what I like about that is, you're able to say, hey, this is when I'm going to execute on my correction, right? I'm going to look at the year before, and then I'm going to set up the year ahead, and then I'm going to execute on it. For us, and I'm sure you do this as well, it's quarterly for us, right? So we do have our year look that we're constantly working towards, but we also quarterly, we're looking back at the quarter and saying, okay, what can we do better? You know what I mean? Sure. And then correcting, and then executing on the next quarter. And those are some of my favorites, because you have to schedule it. If you don't schedule that correction, then you're never going to do it. You're just going to keep reacting day to day. You know what I mean? And that's one of the biggest changes I've had in my business is quarterly. We correct things, we reevaluate, and then we fine tune things so that we can move forward and grow. Right. So I kind of want to pivot in the conversation and talk a little bit about where you're from and what your, childhood was like. 'Cause obviously so much of that shapes us in the future. And then, I've heard one of my favorite things about you is you get two Johns, right? You get you're just a fun guy and love to crack up. You know what I mean? But every now and then you hear something and you're like you're on it, and then you turn into the philosopher. You know what I'm saying? I said it's either one direction or the other. We're either having a lot of fun or we're having a very deep conversation, very impactful conversation. So going back to kind of like where it all started for you.
Yeah, so I grew up outside of Dayton, Ohio, And, I grew up, I was abandoned by my mother at birth, and my father was in prison when I was born. So my mother was only 16 years old when she actually had me. And so I ended up basically being adopted by my grandparents, who now I call my mother and my father. And, she was very young at that time, but I didn't realize that later on in life that this was actually through my entire life, this was going to cause something that I just had no idea that I was even dealing with at the time. And I had these abandonment issues. And there's something about when you're very young and you're not with your parents, and especially when my mother had left me, I think she was with me for about 6 months. And then, and I actually can read it in my baby book, the letter that she actually wrote me when she had to leave. And so when she left me, that caused a lot of abandonment issues. I think I was even told by my grandmother that I used to just, even as a little baby, I would just crawl and fall. Like I wouldn't let her out of my sight, because I was like, I lost this one, I'm not losing you,
Right.
And she said that I would crawl as a little baby to the door and just scream and cry when she was using the restroom, like just that she was out of my sight for just that moment of time. I was very fearful. And I later found out that was also we inherently know as children that if we're left in the wild without parents, we're dead. You know what I mean? Like as human beings, we need parents for a certain amount of time to help us grow up and to help us live. And there's this inherent thing inside of us that when we get abandoned by a parent, that we're going to die. And so I'm here chasing my grandmother around, not trying to let her out of my sight. And that caused like just a bunch of behavioral issues later on. It caused a bunch of issues where I would want to leave people before they left me. So I didn't want to give anybody an opportunity to leave me, meaning that if you slighted me just a little bit, or, I would just walk out on you. I would forget about you, walk out on you, and be done with you, because I wasn't going to give you an opportunity to hurt me as bad as I'd been hurt in the past. And I didn't really know that this was part of my identity from this issue. I mean, I literally got into my 30s before I figured this out. And this is after dealing with my wife in such a way where anytime we got in an argument, I'm out the door. Like I just bolted out. I was gone, hopped in my car, left, went to the bar, did whatever I was going to do. Like I literally just, and it honestly caused me to have this awareness where I would never want to love people more than they love me. So, how much you love me determined that I'm going to love you a little less, because I'm going to make sure that you're disposable, because I'm never going to let you walk out on me. I'm never going to let you hurt me again. And so I grew up with behavioral problems. I grew up with problems where I was chasing women because I was trying to get validation from women that I didn't have. And again, that stems back from being abandoned by my mother. Like I was left unvalidated. And I could still remember times when I was a child where I would just wait for her. Like they would tell me that she was coming, to see me, and she would never show up. And I could just remember being like, I even skipped school when I was in kindergarten because they told me my mom was coming that night. And I was in kindergarten at the time, and I tried to hide out in our garage, and I got caught, of course. And it was all because I was so excited to see her. And of course she never came. Mm-hmm. And so it just became like layer after layer after layer of these abandonment issues, where finally I grew this hard heart where I wouldn't like love anybody more than they could love me. And I truly believe that it's still going to be part of you for a long time. I mean, there's going to be times when you revert back to the old you, but now I'm aware. Now I can discern. Now I can actually say, okay, I'm being this way because of this issue, and I can correct it really quickly. And I've gotten really good at correcting that. But I don't think that pain leaves you, because even me just talking about it, I can just feel, myself wanting to cry, you know what I mean, about it. I can like really feel the pain in my heart just by talking about it. I've just grown to the point now where I'm so self-aware of my feelings that I can properly discern whether or not they're coming from a bad place or a good place, or whether they're serving me or whether they're not. And I can actually only allow the feelings to impact my actions that serve me, So this is one of the importance about becoming very self-aware. So it took me like 30 years, and I went through all kinds of things where, I like to say when my early age, I was a street pharmacist, right? Which is where I learned business in all regards. But then I found out you really don't have to be a salesman to sell drugs. You just got to have really good drugs, and they'll sell themselves. And so later on, I'm trying to sell real things, and I'm like, hey man, you want some of this stuff? Dude, are you just going to sell this to me? Or are you trying to sell me like a bag of weed or something? Right.
Right.
And
Your voice gets real low. You
yeah,
whisper.
like we used to sell this automotive product that you coated cars with, and I'd walk in and be like, hey dude, y'all want some of this? Man, this stuff is some good stuff.
They start looking around.
Like, yeah. So, little by little, I figured all that out, and ended up opening my first business in 2003. And I actually went out with my family. I've always been an entrepreneur. Not only did I, was a street entrepreneur, but I also sold stereo equipment when I was a kid. I would even put up flyers around school. My adopted father, my grandfather, had a very small car dealership where we would get these magazines in the mail, and he was getting wholesale rates on, products and stereo equipments. And I would go through the master, books, and I would put my 20% markup on everything. Probably could have gotten more, but at that time it was like, if I sold something for, $100, I was trying to make $30 or $20, right?
Right. Was that a natural thing that you recognized about yourself? You just saw those opportunities, or was that something that your grandfather kind of like, hey, check this out?
It's so interesting because they called me, like when I was a kid, they called me John the Con. And the reason why is I had a way to con my parents out of money, right? And everybody's seen it, So I had this way of convincing them to buy me things. And I knew the right times when, my grandfather, he liked to drink, and he was a fun drinker. Like he wasn't like me. Like I can't drink at all because I'm not a fun drinker. I just keep getting worse, but he was a fun drinker. I mean, he had this was the only place, Doug, like I literally, his garage in the back of my house where we live, this little town, this little street, in this house. And it was the only place I'd ever seen multimillionaires. All the town millionaires would come there and hang out, and all the town bums and everybody in between. I mean, it was the only time I've ever seen a melting pot of somebody who literally was homeless, sitting there sanding cars for my dad, or buffing cars or detailing cars just to drink beer and eat food. He always had his doors open for that. So anytime, anybody around town knew that if they were the town misfits and they needed a little bit of work, they could come out to, Highley's garage, and they could buff and polish cars, and they'd get all the beer they wanted to drink, and they'd have all the food they wanted to eat. And so that was the way that he did things. And then all of a sudden, old Paul Poling would walk in, multimillionaire who opened up more car dealerships than anybody I know. Like he literally funded probably 50 car dealers that became into big brands. And then Bill Poling, who owned wrecking yard that was literally, Doug, I'm not kidding you, he was doing $100,000 a day in profit. Just taking cars and scrapping the metal. And he had semis just going all day long from this massive wrecking yard. And so, I'd had guys like this walking in that were in my life that were mentoring me and I was learning from. And then I had guys in there that were like the town bums and everybody in between. I mean, even my dad took a guy who was like one of the biggest town bums that there was. His name was Red Reader, and he's not even alive now. But and he literally had no place to live, anything like that. And he made him his car salesman, his lead car salesman, and he lived at the car dealership. He had a little camper outside the car dealership, and he literally lived there. And that's, my dad was known for, my grandfather, who I call my father, was known for just. He would take his shirt off his back for anybody, and he never judged anybody. So some of these guys could have been the biggest town misfits. The other guys could have been, there's preachers coming in there. I mean, it was just a mix of everybody. I've never seen anything like it in my life. And I had the opportunity to grow up in this environment, but I would know when my dad had a little too much to drink. And I would go and I would I talked him into buying a parakeet for me. I talked him into buying a wiener dog for me. I talked him into buying a skateboard, like all these things. So people started calling me John the Con. But back then I was just realizing, when to act and
timing was everything.
And all these things, right?
Yeah.
So which later on, I grew up and opened up my first business and went out and traveled to Southern California. And we opened up an automotive company, which ended up becoming a franchise. Make a long story short, ended up becoming a franchise. And then later on ended up becoming a catalyst for an educational company that I opened, which later on became a catalyst for a marketing service, software, and also events, marketing events. empire that we ended up putting together in this industry, where we ended up like taking over, the entire industry with it.
Mm-hmm.
And then about that time, my company, we ended up, and you guys can probably relate to this. I know you probably don't. You probably do swap out a lot of solar panels when you get hailstorms and stuff like that.
Right.
Well, how my service-based company blew up is that locally, like I was literally a one-man band, for the longest time until I think 2006. I was a one-man band, and that was my first 3 years in business. And then all of a sudden, one day, my phone just started ringing off the hook, and it ended up having a hailstorm locally in the Dayton area that ended up hitting about 100,000 cars. And from that moment on, I had multiple body shops. We ended up renting out an actual factory, and we leased a factory the size of a football field to fill all the cars that we had in it.
Wow.
And I happened to be already popular in the industry because I was doing education. I was already out there on some of the social media channels.
You had already built your machine. And when
I had already built my machine back then, the type of machine you had to build back then.
Right.
So I was able to staff that storm. And between me and another guy, we put the whole deal together, and we ended up doing over $15 million in damage that year.
It's amazing.
And then it just continued to grow from there. So we ended up growing with locations. We ended up growing in that catastrophic hail space where we would travel and, mainly service, our portion of the country. But that just continued to grow into what it did. And then, I kind of, just like anything else, I got tired. I ended up selling it, and ended up opening up a tool manufacturing company during that time as well, which I still own. And you talked about earlier, I got a licensing deal on that. And now we went full into marketing, because I was the marketer of all of our businesses, everything from, manufacturing, from, we've been in manufacturing, we've been in retail, we've been in online space, we've been in software, we've been in a little bit of everything. And, because of that, I got a very, insider look at multiple different industries on how to scale and how to grow them quick. Right. So essentially we got a template, we got a formula that we use for every other business that we have, and I, at some point, I just got tired of being in that industry, and I got out of it and moved on. And now we're blowing up the marketing company to what it's becoming and what it is today.
So that formula, is that something that you kind of keep close to the chest, or is that something you can share?
I mean, yeah, it's a little bit different for every industry, but
maybe like at a high level.
Well, ultimately it's about really doing anything you can possibly do to gain momentum, like literally doing tons of market research and just not stopping until you gain momentum. And then after that, you got to have a strategy to maintain the momentum.
Right.
And I mean, ultimately at the beginning of any business, it takes a certain amount of testing. And you've got to get out there. You've got to do market research, cross market research. You got to find out what's already working out there. You've got to be able to put your creative spin on it so you stand out. Because if you just follow what's already working out there, you've got people that already got lead market advantage.
Right.
So you that's where we start crossing into other industries and stuff like that, and kind of finding out what's working in other industries and kind of marrying them with what's working in the current industry, and blending that with our, ideas that we have that have worked in the past. And you can ultimately create a long-term lead generation system that will just never stop. The things that I look at in a lead generation system, and ultimately that's the lifeblood of the business, right? I mean, this is a sales podcast. Right. Good lead generation and conversion is the lifeblood of the business. So if anybody out here who owns a business and you're sitting here thinking about how you're going to fix fulfillment and stuff like that, but you haven't dialed in how you're going to get leads nonstop, then you need to literally dial that in first, because that's going to be the lifeblood. That's going to give you the confidence to hire people to take care of the fulfillment, to hire people to take care of the leads, the sales staff that you need to hire. The only way that confidence is built is by going after and creating a machine to continuously build and send you leads. And you need to get obsessed with that at the beginning of any business. And there's a lot of data depending on different industries. I mean, a lot of it does have similarities, and it's very common. We look at things like, how does it look on YouTube? Because YouTube is planting a seed today to make that thing grow 3 months from now, or a year from now, or 2 years from now, right? So I'm looking at the long term, and I'm looking at the short term. I'm also looking at market positioning. How do we look when a client finds us? Because the market positioning is key, because that's what's actually going tick up your conversion rate. Because I have people tell me all the time, they're like, dude, I'll get somebody, 1,000 leads. I'm like, well, why would you want 1,000 leads? Right. I mean, look, I do want 1,000 leads if they got a high conversion rate.
Right.
Of course I do. But I don't want 1,000 cold leads that have a real crappy conversion rate, because now you're burn me out. You're just wasting my time.
Yeah.
Right. So I try to figure out, number one, like, how do we move into a market? How do we position ourselves as the authority in the market? How do we do that from multiple different angles? They call me the marketing savage because I look at things from all these different angles. I'm looking at, like, how can we do it through YouTube? How can we do it locally? How can we position ourselves, as an authority, like with a podcast, like you're doing today? How does all of this look in the grand scheme of things, 6 months from now, a year from now? Because I'm not afraid to lose money for the first year. I'm not afraid to lose money for the first year in a business. I'll gain a portion of that money back. But, there's something that a lot of business owners need to realize, is that most big businesses are built on the back end of that business. 100%. And so if I get a business where I can break even on conversions, meaning I can pay my sales staff, I can pay my employees, I can, fulfill, I pay my fulfillment cost, all of that stuff. If I break even, now I've got a business as big as I want. I've got a $10 million, $20 million business, as big as I want to grow it, because I've got the cost covered, and I can make all my money on the back end with the repeat clients and the lifetime value of the customer. So I'm looking at all that stuff. Like, what does a lifetime value look like? How do we increase that lifetime value? How do we increase the conversion rate? I'm looking at that stuff all the time. How do we increase the traffic count coming in? What sources are coming in? These are things that we mind map out and we lay out, and we go out there and we do it. You know what I mean? Like, the key is to get out there, put a strategy together, and just do it, because you're going to learn more than sitting around and thinking about what you're going to do.
Right.
Having meeting after
overthinking the whole business.
Having meeting after meeting after meeting. No, you it's so easy nowadays to figure out how people are getting their leads. And it's so easy to even create something that's better, because look, a below average person can take, like, look at a competitor, right? Or somebody in their industry, and say, wow, that's working. I can do that exactly the same. Right. So now, but you don't have lead market advantage. Again, you're their exhaust, right? Because these people are crafting ideas that are a year ahead of you. A good marketer can look at that and say, wow, that's pretty cool that that's working for them, and you can go look at other industries. You can take your past experience and you can put something together that's a unique identity for you. Yes, you need to do market research. Yes, you need to figure out what is working. Yes, you need to figure out where your audience is, how they're converting them. You need to know all this stuff, but you need to be at the point where you can take it and you can make that system and you can shape it and make it even better. See, I look for industries like that. I look for industries that I look at it and I'm just like, these guys are doing things like 10 years behind, they're 5, 10 years behind, because if they're 5 and 10 years behind, we can take what is working there and we can bring it up to speed, bring it up to today's technology, and we can just take it all to the next level.
100%. One of the things that I like that you said is, that sometimes you need to look at the leads coming in, and it may just be a matter of increasing those leads coming in. But what I like about that is too many businesses, they don't have enough data, right?
Yeah.
So I love data. That's kind of how I actually started out in marketing, right? I did full page newspaper campaigns for collectible gold sales, and we would run the remnant ads. I forgot what they're called, standby ads, right? So basically, if they couldn't fill the space, they would run our ad, and it would be full page USA Today, full page, Honolulu Express, and it was collectible gold sales. But anyways, when I came into the business, I had a huge advantage because I had 7 years of data from where to advertise, when to advertise, where the moon was in the sky at the time that they placed that ad. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I went crazy on data for the longest time. And that was one of the foundations that I used going forward in my business. I was able to look at, recruiting is big in my business, right? So I was able to see, okay, we have all this recruiting data, and whenever we place ads here, we get this kind of recruit and they convert this way. And, this is how many sales they get on average before they turn out, if they turn out. And then this is how many leaders I create from this group, from this ad, you know what I'm saying? And so too many businesses aren't putting enough money into the front end so they can have the data to optimize the back end.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
so that when that lead comes in and it passes all the way through, you've calculated how it would pass through, and you built your business according to that, you know?
Yeah.
And so I really do love what you said about that. And then also, you were talking about YouTube earlier, and at our last RBO mastermind, we had the What's Inside guy, you know, and I always forget his name. I know he's the What's Inside guy from YouTube, right? And he talked about YouTube Shorts. So kind of capitalizing on different social media platforms, initiatives that they're putting together, finding out what those initiatives are, and then attacking them because they're giving more eyes to that, right? And one of them right now is YouTube Shorts. Do you know any other ones that are out there in the marketplace that we can use to get leads?
Yeah, so I'm actually in the process right now. I've avoided TikTok for the longest time, and I hired one of the world's best like TikTok experts, and I'm now we're really getting to the point where we're extracting some data and understanding, you know, what it's about and how to do it. But yes, you do got to work the algorithms. There are certain times a day that you should be posting on all of these platforms. There are, you know, so you literally got a posting window. The second thing is that you get what you got to understand about shorts and what you got to understand about TikTok videos, and is what we are really honing in right now as a company as a whole, is that the watch time on them are very important. So you got to have a good hook. You got to have a good hook, and then you got to segue into a problem, and then you've got to go into a solution. So that's how people are actually retaining the viewer for a certain amount of time. So what happens is on the shorts, not only do you got to focus on the exact time, the exact hashtags, because you got to put the hashtags in there. YouTube's going to deal a lot with your channel, you know, just the audience that follows your specific channel. We hashtag YouTube as well. I don't know how effective the hashtags are on YouTube compared to TikTok. But the hashtags on TikTok are huge because that actually gives TikTok data to who they're going to serve your audience to. And a lot of times that data, TikTok, they work really well in a broad audience. I actually had a meeting with, I got a hold of a TikTok employee and had him come on board with our company and work with us on, you know, the back end advertisements of TikTok.
Yep.
And I can't really tell you his name, but he's been working with us and showing us. And I was very surprised because we actually went through on TikTok through there. They've got like a back end, just like Facebook Business, but it's TikTok's business version. It's like an advertisement. It doesn't have the data or the analytics, but it is simplified compared to Facebook, right?
Yeah.
So Facebook can get very advanced. This is very simple at this point, right?
Is this? I'm curious now for myself. Is this something that anybody can access?
Yeah. You got to apply. You got to apply a bunch of things through there, and they got to verify your business and stuff like that. We're still having problems. TikTok even has a marketplace where you can pay influencers to advertise for you.
Nice.
Meaning that you can basically give them $1,000 or something, and then we can share it to their audience and things like that. Right.
Yeah.
So they got a marketplace for that as well, but we're having problems. We got our business verified on the front end of the advertisement. And now they keep denying us on this marketplace. It normally takes 2 weeks. But long story short, my guy in TikTok is working on it now. We put in a ticket again yesterday, and he's trying to escalate the ticket and figure it out. So anyhow, I'm working with an insider, right? And I'm working with an insider in there. Look, hey man, I'm a believer. Like I find somebody, you know, I'll pay them to teach me, and I'm just that collapses time. Like I wouldn't know the things I know about TikTok now, and we're just getting into it. Like I said, I decided I was going to go in on it maybe about a month ago. So now we're receiving the data to understand, you know, how it all works. And we went ahead and jumped in there and ran some ads. But the big thing that when I was on there with this guy who worked for TikTok, is they really want you to run to a big audience, because TikTok is going to get in there and their AI is going to take over, and it's eventually going to dial in the audience. But you got to run to a big audience. I mean, like, you know, billions of people. You know, you're going to want to run. Like I was literally putting audience in like 20, 30 million. He's like, oh, that's not enough. Oh, that's not enough. They're not going to figure out your algorithm with that. No, that's not enough. And we scaled it up, and it works better with bigger audiences because that AI kicks in. Facebook is a lot like that now too. It used to be you would really taper in your audience and really try to target them. Right. Now with the AI features and stuff like that, you want a bigger, broader audience to give Facebook's AI the ability to actually search that audience and to pull out the people that fit with your product or service. So That being said, it's not only about creating the right content, because we're in the content development phase of all this. Because you got retention time. The longer you can retain that viewer, if you can get them to give them a reason to like your channel, to follow you, or even look at it, or to rewatch it again, like all of this stuff goes into the algorithm. So you got to be kind of clever with your videos in such a way where, again, you bring them in with the hook. You got 3 seconds to bring them in, or they're going to be swiping up.
Right.
So in 3 seconds, you got to hit them with some sort of hook that causes them to stay. And from there, a lot of times, if you do a problem and a solution, they've got to wait to hear the solution. And if you can, dial that in such a way where it's very intriguing for an audience, you do that now. But here's the trick with TikTok, and I believe that it's going to be very popular with YouTube as well. When you find something that hits and you find something that takes off, because what happens is, from my understanding, and I got these 2 experts on TikTok that I'm working with right now. One of them is also an expert in YouTube, and I'm getting this up-to-date data between these guys. And from my understanding is, you just continue posting at these specific times a day. So, and you're going to get little engagement. You're going to be changing your content. And you just keep doing it. You just keep being consistent. Post 3 to 6 times a day on TikTok. Be consistent. Only post in the hours that you should be posting on TikTok. And believe it or not, you want to be posting in the hours where your audience is less likely to be there, because TikTok is going to serve it to more people outside of your audience.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's all these weird things that you learn about these platforms, right? And ultimately, it's about creating content that people love, that hooks them in, that causes the retention time to stay. And when something hits, you continue to do that over and over again. So you go back to testing, and I'm looking at what's happening not only in my industry, but I'm looking at what's happening in all these different industries. And I'm trying to put something together where, I'm the marketing savage, right? So I'm literally thinking about ideas right now with running shorts and TikToks and reels, where it starts out with this savage scene of like a lion, attacking a bear or something, right?
Yeah.
And, sucks them in, and then, you know what I mean? And then finding out ways to hook that into what it is that I do without them leaving at that point, because all of a sudden now it's a little spammy and advertising, right?
Yeah, of course.
So you almost got to set it up in such a way where they figure out who it is and what it is that you do. You hit your audience, but you bring them in such a way where it's very impactful at the beginning and they stay. So that my friends, it's a formula that you've got to internally create, and you've got to experiment with, and it's worth it, because I guarantee you within the next 30 days, we'll hit it big on one of them platforms.
Nice. Yeah. I was taking notes as you said it, and it's, I try not to take notes during podcasts, but you're giving me ideas literally as we go. And I'm like, I've got to write this down. And then also, obviously, I want to be able to share some shorts on TikTok of these conversations and reference my editors to those parts in the conversation.
Another thing that adds to your post time, Doug, is when is your audience going to be on? You know what I mean? So you do have to step into that psychology, like at what times are your audience going to be on? Because, if you're advertising to college kids, for instance, right? Like, people that go to college, you're not going to adadvertise them 9 a.m. in the morning on Saturday. When they're drunk from the night before, probably, and laying on the floor in the frat house. You're not going to want to advertise to them at that exact time. So you gotta use your brain a little bit.
Yeah.
You gotta understand your audience, understand your clients, understand what's hooking them, and create something cool. What I love about this, Doug, is that it brings the creative mind out of you. Like, I love this part of the business. Like, you get to have fun with it. Your employees get to have fun with it. To neglect this part and just stick with all the boring stuff is just neglecting something that can really bring people together in your company, and really put together a culture of people that just want to be a part of something bigger.
And they innovate too because of that. No, it definitely convicted me, because my TikTok right now is just another place we post a similar, we create reels and then we post them on TikTok. Obviously we change them up a little bit for TikTok, but we're not doing great. You know what I mean? It's just so it's there, so people can go to my TikTok and say, oh, he's got content. He's legit. Right. You know what I'm saying? And then that's how I started out. I wasn't too worried about it. But now that I think about it, now that you're saying you need that hook in the first 3 seconds, I'm like, well, a lot of my content on there are clips of podcasts like this, And so why don't, instead of I just put out the clip there and it's just that person talking, you know what I mean? And maybe some hashtags and stuff like that. Why don't I introduce the concept they're talking about in that first 3 seconds? Like, hey, check this out. You know, Highley's talking about how you can arbitrage TikTok. Listen to this. And then they go, you know what I'm saying? Because if they're on my page and if they're seeing my content, they came for me, you know, and I'm not giving them me. I'm giving them somebody else right away instead of at least introing this person, you know, and giving them the authority to speak on my medium. So that was a great piece that I wanted to point out and make sure. And everything that John's talking about, guys, this is all lead gen. Everything he's talking about, you can turn this into lead gen. It's
income revenue. It's revenue generating activity is what it is. I like to, you know, you can call it lead gen, but I like to call it income, you know, or income generating activity, meaning you're generating revenue while you're doing something.
Right.
And, you know, ultimately, you've got to be respective to any platform, for instance. That's why podcasts, and believe me, we all do it. I got podcasts I put up on my YouTube channel and stuff like that. Believe me, I do. But I know better. I actually know better. You know what I mean? I just do it because I'm, you know, hoping a certain amount of people see it, right? Whatever, right?
Well, it's just being omnipresent. You know what I mean? Like you're
it's
everywhere.
Not respective to the platform, unless you're Joe Rogan or somebody like that.
Exactly.
Respective to the platform, YouTube has their own format. Just go watch it. Go find a popular YouTuber and watch their videos. A lot of times they're sitting there in a certain scene and they're just intimately talking into the camera about, you know, what they're getting ready to do for the YouTube viewer. And then it'll move on to another scene and maybe another scene, and then it'll come back to an explanation. That's
as you're saying it, I'm like, yes, the ones that I watch, that's what they do.
That's what being respective to the platform is. I mean, you really, it's bigger than just, you know, what do I do overall, right? Because some people just got this idea that I can do one piece of content, cut it into 100 different pieces, put it everywhere, and that's going to work. Well, at the end of the day, I guess it's better than nothing.
Right.
But anything's better than nothing. But to really fire something up and to go to the next level is being very respective to the platform, understanding what the users of that platform like, what they want to consume, and dialing in. I mean, shoot, we give your audience a super secret thing right here. Install TubeBuddy on your YouTube account. So TubeBuddy is a software that blends with your YouTube channel with a Google Chrome application, and you will have all the data that you've ever wanted. You'll explore how many views any other channels are getting. You can explore split test actual thumbnails through TubeBuddy. They'll declare the winner for you and leave it on there. You'll be able to collect all of the data that you need on just the title of your video. So you can go in and type in different titles of different videos, and TubeBuddy will give you the amount of searches that are done for that specific title. Like, for example, if I was to do a video about, you know, how to do TikTok or how to advertise on TikTok or something to that nature, it would get a considerably lower amount of searches compared to how to advertise on TikTok 2022. Just by tacking on that 2022, because everybody knows who's searching for an advertisement that they don't want last year's. They don't want a video from 2018, 2019, right? They want a video from 2022 because they know the platforms always change, right? So there's little things like that you actually dial in when you start getting this data, and you use these little helpers like TubeBuddy that's just a Chrome extension. And I do pay for it. So I do a pro plan. I think it's only like $20 a month or something like that.
Right.
But it gives me all the data that I need to make the right decision to give my videos a much better chance of being seen.
There's a consistent theme here of everything you're talking about in it. And to me, it's great marketing. Savage marketing is born in data. You know, that's what I'm hearing over and over and over again. I love that because I believe in that so much. So it makes a lot of sense to me. All right.
It is, man. Yeah, it is.
So I want to pivot one more time here, and it kind of gets back into the philosophy piece, but you know, it's more personal. And this is a question I've been asking a lot lately because it's a very interesting subject to me. And I modify my own a little bit each time out of everybody that, you know, I talk to. I add a little piece or I take away a little piece because they convict me on things or whatever the case is. But it's about legacy, you know, and the question is, what does your legacy or what does legacy mean to you?
For me, what does legacy mean? Ultimately, man, I'm going to be straight up with you, man. I'm a born again Christian. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. And for me, ultimately, at the end of the day, I am trying to, teach people what I believe to be the truth. Mm-hmm. And to me, when you subscribe to being a Christian, you basically subscribe to the idea that you never die, meaning that we live forever. And that when this physical human body dies, that you go on into heaven and you live eternity in heaven, right? So we subscribe to that as a belief. And because of that, I don't really put a lot of value, because in the Bible it says that the things you see are not heavenly things, meaning that the physical things that you see on this earth, the thing behind me, my desk, the car out here, my house that I'm in, at one point, this is all going to be bulldozed or burned down or lost or decayed. At one point, all of this stuff is going to be gone. And that's why it's not the things of heaven, right? So the things of heaven are the things that you can't see. And that means that's the virtues that we have to develop inside of our heart. That's like courage, that's temperance, that's being an individual who people can really look at and say, man, I want to be like this person. Like, I want to, whatever this person has, like, I want this, right? And a lot of that, to me, like, my legacy is not so much like, I don't really spend too much time thinking about my name living generation after generation after generation, because I believe that one day this world is just going to be gone. My legacy is like, what am I doing for people now that can change their lives, and then they can change other people's lives, and then the other people. It's called we call that the pass the torch principle, meaning that in Christianity and many other religions, they talk about shining your light. And what that means is just what I told you here. It means showing people that you're a man of your word, that you're an individual that has integrity, that you're an individual that has temperance, that you're disciplined. All of these great things, and great qualities that come from the spirit side of yourself. Mm-hmm. And actually teaching and showing people and displaying that is the good way to live. And if they can see my light, and even if their torch is just barely flickering, you got people, man, when you shine your light and you're out there, and I'm not talking about bragging, being boastful. I'm just talking about going out there and living a life of virtue. And if there's some people, they're going to see your torch just blazing. They're going to see, when you start living a life of virtue, your spirit becomes bigger than yourself. People will feel you when you walk in the room. You'll set the temperature for the room. And when you walk in, people will just have to rise to that temperature. You become bigger than who you are. And because of that, you're shining your light, and people see that. And you might have people that just have a little tiny flickering light, right? Their torch is just barely flickering, man. They're barely holding on. Mm-hmm. They get the opportunity to walk up and touch your light, and they can explode their torch with fire, and they get to go touch other people and touch other people. So my name isn't really my important part of my legacy, but like who I am through people is more important to me. Because I believe that is how we change the world. Look, you can only change the world. Everything outside of nature, it was built in the thought of man. Again, the cars, the desk, the house, all this stuff. First was a thought. Like, it was a thought. We had a thought, and we said, hey, this chair looks great, and it serves a purpose in the world because I don't have to sit on the ground anymore. Right. So I'm going to build this chair. Well, guess what was also created in the thought of man? Wars, poverty. All of these terrible things that we have in humanity that people have got to deal with, are also created in the thoughts of man first. So the only way to change the direction that we're going in this world is to change the thoughts of man. And the only way to do that is begin living the life. Like, we're all part of that. Like we all are contributors by living our life in a certain way, by changing the way we are, changing who we are. We are contributors of changing the whole. So like, just by focusing on being the best we can be for God, or whoever it is, man, whoever that is in your life, by focusing on who we can be the best we can be and showing people that we're changing the world. And I want my legacy to be more about that than, specifically my name or anything like that.
Well, I got to tell you, John, you're living that, because you've done that for me. You've exploded my torch before. And I see you do it when we are in the same rooms together. And when you walk in, 100% that is happening. So keep doing what you're doing, brother. And it's been an honor to have you on this podcast. I mean, ending that way is too right. You know what I'm saying? If people want to reach out, they want a word, they need marketing. You know what I mean? Any of that stuff, where do they reach out to you at?
You can either head on over to marketingsavage.com, or you can also join our community on Facebook, Marketing Savage, the Facebook group.
100%, brother. We'll include those links in here. Wanted to thank you so much again for coming on to the show. It's been an amazing honor. Thank you. All
right, brother. I appreciate you, Doug.
Let's get building.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Building Great Sales Teams. We sure do appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, make sure you're subscribed to the show wherever you consume podcasts. This way you'll get notifications as new episodes become available. Remember, great sales teams are not recruited. They are built block by block. Until next time.